Welcome back to New Teacher Talk. Thanks for hanging out with us today. This is your space for honest conversations about what early career teaching actually feels like. No matter where you teach, our goal is to help you feel supported, connected, and equipped with practical ideas you can start using tomorrow. In addition to this podcast channel, you can also find our community on Instagram and Blue Sky at New Teacher Talk. Through our social media, we share quick tips, real stories, and a community that understands exactly what you are navigating every day. So follow us and become part of the conversation with peers and veteran teachers alike. I'm Dr. Beth, one of the co-hosts of New Teacher Talk. My background includes serving as a high school band director, mentor, and teacher educator.
And I'm Dr. Anna, an early childhood generalist who mentors educators as they begin their careers and on their journey toward national board certification. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Virginia Shank. Dr. Shank joins us from Liberty University, where she works closely with early career educators and studies what helps new teachers feel capable, confident, and supported. Her research and mentoring experience give her a unique lens on what early career teachers need in order to thrive.
Dr. Shank, if you don't mind, we'll probably call you Jenny moving forward in this conversation today.
Perfect.
We are excited to know that you're going to be talking about teacher self-efficacy. At the heart of every new teacher's journey is the belief that I can do this. This conversation today walks us through what strengthens new teachers' confidence, what can shake it, what support really matters, and how mentors and leaders can help early career teachers thrive.
So let's get started. Ginny, when you think about new teachers stepping into their first classrooms, how would you explain teacher self-efficacy in practical terms to them? And why is it such a powerful predictor of their day-to-day confidence and success?
Thank you so much for having me. In practical terms, self-efficacy is the belief that I, as a teacher, can be successful in positively impacting my students. This includes academic success, their engagement in learning, and just making an overall meaningful difference in their lives. And I think this is why the majority of people enter the profession. Teacher self-efficacy is not natural talent or personality. And thankfully, it's not fixed. It can really vary based on the types of students you're serving and subject matter. For example, my background is in literacy, so I have high self-efficacy for teaching reading, but very low self-efficacy for teaching high school students biology. So the good news is that teacher self-efficacy can be improved, and it matters because you're right. It is a predictor of success, as teachers with high self-efficacy are much more likely to serve their students well, even when it is challenging. In my research, I've found that self-efficacy impacts how teachers instruct, how they manage their classrooms, and their willingness to be inclusive or include a wide range of diverse students with different academic and cultural backgrounds. And self-efficacy not only benefits students, but also teachers. Low self-efficacy has been linked to poorer health, more stress, and lack of job satisfaction, while teachers with high self-efficacy are more likely to be motivated, persist through difficulties, and continue in the field.
Ginny, I just have to speak to that idea of persistence. I was texting with one of my mentees this morning, and she was talking about a real concern for her day tomorrow because conditions in her school were changing, and she's very worried about how she's going to be able to manage through that day without the usual support that she regularly has. And I talked to her about keeping it simple and replicating structures in her classroom that have been successful in the past so that she could have a better day tomorrow.
Well, it sounds like you gave her powerful advice.
Jenny, let's go a little deeper. with this, and let's pull on this thread a little bit more. Anna has just given us an example of the mentoring she's been doing, and tomorrow is a big day for one of her mentees. Let's just dig deep into what kinds of classroom moments or challenges tend to chip away at a new teacher's sense of, I can do this.
I wish that I could say that what Anna just shared is unusual, but I think it's very typical that our mentees are feeling like they need support. And when something changes, it can really create a lot of stress and wondering what's tomorrow going to be like. But the main thing I hear from teachers is that when they feel ineffective or unproductive, especially during instruction, that they become very discouraged. Many of them have shared with me that they don't feel prepared to address some of the emotional issues that their students are displaying, some of the severity of behaviors that they're seeing in their classroom. I think new teachers in particular also seem to feel personally responsible when their students don't make the academic progress that they were hoping to see. And I think the additional pressure of high stakes testing and how those results might reflect on them or their school or district just adds to sort of this pressure cooker, which can leave new teachers struggling to understand the way they're feeling and how to regulate their own emotions. They may feel isolated without a strong support system in a new school or a new environment. So, Anna, I love that your mentee has you to reach out to, but I would say that there are many early career teachers who don't have someone with whom they can communicate regularly and get that kind of support and advice, and they need it for just these situations.
And on the flip side, we've talked about those things that happen that aren't so positive for early career teachers. But what classroom experiences or those small wins have you seen that really strengthen a new teacher's ability to see themselves as capable?
I think that's a great question. I asked some of my new teacher friends, some of my former teacher candidates, some of participants in my research study, and what has come up again and again is that creating and building and maintaining strong relationships with their students seems to be the most important win for teachers when it comes to strengthening their belief in their own abilities. Knowing their students well, developing trust between them, and they shared that they felt that there was a direct connection between their relationships with students and their students' willingness to put forth the effort to achieve academically, follow their classroom rules, to really engage in the learning process. Another boost that I've observed for teachers is when they have some additional training in either special education or social and emotional learning. This could be additional coursework, but it also could be professional development or something where the teacher is taking time to do their own reading and learning. However they are developing their skills, it seems to help them to know how to de-escalate challenging situations. And it gives them some practical strategies for meeting the needs of each of their students, not just academically, but as a whole person.
The idea of reaching students as whole people and building that sense of trust is really quite helpful, because if the students don't feel that you're worthy of giving effort and that they see that you've put effort back into them and that you have a sense of belief in them as students, it's hard for them to have their own feelings of self-efficacy as learners if you're not devoting effort into getting to know them and expressing your belief in their ability to learn.
Absolutely. I always encourage my new teachers to go to your students' games, get to know what is important to them, because once they realize that they're important to you, even outside of the classroom, they are so much more interested in what you have to share within the classroom.
It's that idea of the investment in them.
That's so well said. I know we're getting to the end of the school year now, and there's still many things that can be done to strengthen those relationships or send our students off to their summer vacations, feeling good about the connection you've made with them. And of course, when we start back in the fall with our new students, building that relationship and building one's teacher self-efficacy right away is so important. Might you share an example or two of this relationship building as it relates to teacher efficacy here at the end of the year or at the beginning of the school year, Jenny?
Absolutely. Let's start with the beginning of the year, getting to know students, asking questions and remembering their answers, even if that means you have to put some notes in your phone or on a little scrap of paper. We're human. We can't always remember everything, but being intentional about remembering what they told you about their family, remembering that it was grandpa's birthday and asking them on Monday, how did the birthday party go? Or did you win your soccer game? Or what about the new puppy? Whatever it is that's important in the student's life. And I think this applies whether they're elementary, middle, high school, and even college, getting to know what matters to them and taking an interest, being interested enough to remember and ask again and follow up. And it also gives the teacher a chance to share about themselves. And I think that's a great way to begin, is just being very intentional about getting to know them and asking questions. Obviously, as the school year progresses, you start to have so many shared experiences. And I would always try to build those experiences, whether that is bringing in a special book to share, a guest speaker, a video, something that we could all share together that's a shared experience. And, there are students who long for summer, and then there are students who really, school is their safe place. As teachers, we have to keep that in mind. And so being accessible to students and letting them know that you are going to miss being their teacher, you're going to miss seeing them every day, and that you're looking forward to reconnecting in the school year, or even sharing things where you're in touch with parents and checking on the students, just really maintaining that relationship so that when the school year returns and those students see you again in the hallway, even if they're no longer primarily in your classroom or in your class period, they still see you as a positive difference maker within the school and someone that they feel cares about them and sees them as capable. I had the privilege of being a reading specialist, so I was able to work with a wide range of grade levels each year within an elementary school. And it was amazing how sometimes the relationship I built with an older sibling would transfer to a younger sibling just through the family before I'd even taught them, because I had become close with the family, maybe had gotten to know them through going to a ball game. And, events still happen in the summer, and it's a great way for students to still see their teachers when they show up at community events or things that they think will be important to students.
Those community events are what really connect you as the teacher to you as the human, to you as part of that wider community. And again, it comes back to that idea that you're trustworthy.
Yes.
And when you talk about being a reading specialist, you have to be very vulnerable in that situation, because often you're having to share things about you that are hard, that you're struggling with something. And by having those positive relationships with families, with the student, then that student who comes to you says, Dr. Shank, she's going to be able to help me get to where I want to be.
It's an amazing opportunity. I have one of my first students who works now at my neighborhood grocery store, and I get the chance to see him often. And at first, he was so shocked to see me in a store outside of the school building, I suppose. But it's such a treat as a teacher to see your students grow up, to see them become citizens and part of the community. And so those relationships can extend far beyond the classroom. You made an important point. I think that when you develop trust and they see you as someone who is on their team for the long term, they're willing to take risks with you and for you. And that is really important when they're struggling, whether that struggle is emotional or academic. They're willing to go with you if they trust you.
One of the things I used to always say to my students is that sometimes when things were hard, try a little bit, and I know that you want to get there, but make this first try for me, and eventually you'll be able to try and get it and do it for yourself. Because we have trust. Try for me for the first time.
I love that.
That's just really great. This collective working together and encouraging the students and finding out what they are interested in all really comes back to the culture of the classroom, culture of the school, and how, as a new teacher, you are self-efficacious when you have those positive experiences. And even on those bad days of pushing through, having that grit and persistence. And that's what I really liked, Jenny, when you started out earlier in our conversation about defining what is teacher efficacy.
Before we jump back in, are you job hunting? The AAEE Job Search Handbook for Teachers is one of our favorite go-to resources for new educators. It's practical, it's helpful, and it works. Grab the link in the show notes.
I'm curious at this point if you could speak to the link between teacher self-efficacy and teacher retention, especially in those early years as an educator. In particular, I'm curious if you'll also address what should our mentors and induction leaders understand about that connection?
Well, I think based on my research and experience, teacher self-efficacy and retention are very closely linked. As I did mention earlier, teachers with high self-efficacy are not only more effective, but they're more motivated to keep going, to persist, to show that resilience, even when difficulties and tough times arise, and they will for all of us. And on the contrast, teachers with lower self-efficacy can tend to get burnt out quicker and leave the field. One statistic I read said that about 50% of American teachers were leaving education within the first 5 years. And sadly, that was pre-COVID. And so I suspect that percentage could be even higher, or maybe within the first 3 years instead of 5 years today. And so you mentioned mentors and induction leaders. They're in a unique position to help boost teacher self-efficacy and retention in a few different ways. I think the most important is strong mentoring programs. They're really a necessity in our schools. And I encourage my teacher candidates to ask specific questions about a school or district's mentoring program during their interview process, because it makes such a difference in the critical first years. From my experience and observation, the best programs seem to include both some school-based and outside mentors. They meet with the new teachers consistently. It's not just a drop in when it's convenient. We have set times to meet, and they can have really honest conversations that aren't evaluative. I think when your only mentor is your direct supervisor, that leads to less honesty in conversations, because none of us, when we're new in a career, want to admit all of the struggles that we're facing, maybe to the person who's coming to observe us the next day. And so I think it's really important who is chosen. And so I really encourage induction leaders to be selective when they choose who should be the best mentors. The research indicates that teachers who have a passion for training new teachers and the next generation of educators, and those who are given some sort of recognition or incentive for serving in this way, make the best mentors. When someone is voluntold that they're going to be a mentor, I don't think that sets them or the mentee up for success. I think once the partnership has been established, induction leaders can provide guidance on what are we talking about in this month's meeting or this week's meeting, really giving them the topics that would be important for new teachers and to talk through with them. and seeking feedback from both the mentor and the mentee about how the process is working, and being open to make changes and improvements to the process when needed or for a specific parent.
You've talked about trust here, and trust between the new teacher or the early career teacher and the mentor. I fully support your idea about having an internal mentor as well as one outside the school district. I know Anna does that regularly in different places around the country. It is so eye-opening, the ability of mentors both inside and outside the school district to deeply help that early career teacher. It is worth the money that schools invest in that, and trust has to be a foundation to all of that. If there's no trust, there can be no growth. And someone who is struggling, and we all struggled as new teachers. Every profession,
Yes.
there's a struggle. It's not unique to teaching, but to have the support that you need and when you need it is so important. And as you know, the school year has different ups and downs. It has a different pace to it at the beginning versus the middle, and then after spring breaks and as the year comes to a close. So I really appreciate your approach to that question. I think it's so critically important that our mentors and induction leaders understand the process that's so helpful to new educators.
I appreciate what you shared about it being an investment, because it is an investment of resources to bring in outside mentors. It's an investment of time. But I agree with you that that investment is returned tenfold when teachers stay and grow instead of having to replace teachers on a regular basis.
Research shows that it costs more to replace teachers every year than it does to offer a high quality mentoring and induction program, because when early career teachers feel supported and they receive the support that they need on a regular basis, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
And finally, based on your research and experience in preparing new teachers, what kinds of support make the biggest difference in helping them stay, grow, and thrive in our profession?
Well, this is such an important question. And I think there are many kinds of supports, but I think there are some that are the big difference makers. And so one of those, and I'm a little biased as a professor, but I think one is having a strong partnership between colleges and universities and local schools. This allows for frequent and varied field experience for teacher candidates, and they're benefiting from the supervision of both university and K-12 faculty. And this better prepares them, I think, for the real world. And if done well, it can alleviate some of the lack of preparation that I think early career teachers feel for what they experience when they get in their own classrooms. Now, once a candidate is hired by a school, again, I'm going to hit mentors again because they do need to be assigned to that strong mentor, but I would also advocate for that support to extend beyond the first year. I think it needs to be a longer term mentorship, whether that's 2 or 3 years. It can vary, but I do think it needs to go beyond just that first semester or first year in the classroom. Another big difference maker I've seen is training that is scenario based. And what I mean by that is when new teachers are given the opportunity within their schools to get training on practical situations that they're going to face and get the chance to walk through them, discuss them, whether this happens in a new teacher meeting with mentors or whether this is part of a professional learning community with their grade level teams or subject area teams. But topics might be things like, how do you respond to challenging behaviors? Or how do you have the tough conversation with a parent when it's almost parent-teacher conference time? You all had spoken about the seasonality of a school year. And I think timing these scenario-based trainings to get ahead of what we know are some of the pressure points throughout a school year is so beneficial. And lastly, I really encourage school and district leaders to provide resources for early career teachers. They need resources related to resilience and grit and self-care. Teaching is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think those of us who are veteran teachers and those who are in leadership really need to create supportive communities within our schools to support, encourage, include, and help these new career teachers thrive. And part of that is hosting or helping to present meaningful professional development opportunities each semester. There are topics that are relevant to everyone, but then there are topics that are especially helpful for early career teachers. And in my experience, they've shared that it's most helpful when it's something that they can use in their classroom sooner rather than later, when the speaker is credible. And usually for new teachers, that feels like another teacher who has proven skills and success. And that having the opportunity to talk through scenarios, participate in professional development, and just be part of a supportive community. I think all of those things keep early career teachers growing and thriving in what I believe is a noble profession.
We believe that too, Dr. Shank.
I know you do.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for being our guest today. I hope our listeners have left with at least one or two new ideas that they had not considered specific to the topic of teacher efficacy and being resilient and making a difference every day in your classroom. We want to thank everyone for being here today. And each week, we want you to know that we post a free resource you can snag on Instagram and Blue Sky at New Teacher Talk. For example, on Tuesdays, we share a ready-to-use downloadable, and then on Thursdays, we provide some motivation so you can keep showing up as your best teacher self.
And we also hope you'll become a regular follower of our podcast channel. And remember, keep going. Every day in the classroom is shaping the teacher you're becoming. We're in this together. You've got this. See you next time.